Everybody was ready to move on. For weeks, the conversation sounded almost identical everywhere you looked. The Caitlin Clark hype had peaked. The league had adjusted. The excitement was cooling off. The spotlight that once seemed impossible to escape was finally starting to fade. At least that's what people thought. Then one game arrived and completely shattered that narrative. Because while critics were busy explaining why Clark's influence was slowing down, she was quietly preparing a reminder that changed the entire conversation in a single night. And the numbers that followed were impossible to ignore. The strange part is that the skepticism didn't come from nowhere. Clark entered the WNBA carrying expectations unlike almost any player before her. Every game became national news. Every mistake became a headline. Every cold shooting night turned into evidence for people who desperately wanted to prove that professional basketball was different. The argument sounded reasonable. The league was faster. The defenders were stronger. The pressure was bigger. And eventually, according to many observers, reality would catch up. But sports has a funny way of exposing confident predictions. Because when the ball went up, Clark looked nothing like a player struggling to find her footing. She looked like somebody taking control. And that was only the beginning. From the opening stretches of the game, there was a different energy surrounding Indiana. Every possession seemed sharper. Every offensive action felt more dangerous. Defenders weren't simply guarding Clark, they were reacting to her. That's an important difference. Great players score. Special players force entire defenses to change their behavior. The moment Clark crossed half court, attention shifted. Defenders shaded toward her. Help defenders hesitated. Passing lanes opened that normally wouldn't exist, and Clark saw all of it. The scoring grabbed headlines, but the real damage came from her ability to dictate everything happening around her. That's when people started realizing this wasn't going to be an ordinary night. And then came the audience numbers. What happened next may have been even more significant than anything on the court. Reports began circulating that the matchup had become the most watched WNBA game in league history. Think about that for a second. Not one of the most watched. The most watched. Suddenly, the discussion wasn't just about basketball anymore. Now people were talking about television ratings, audience growth, and the league's future. The same critics who spent months questioning Clark's impact were forced to confront a very uncomfortable reality. The attention wasn't disappearing. If anything, it was getting bigger. Much bigger. And once those viewership numbers started spreading, the entire debate shifted. Because numbers don't care about narratives. They don't care about opinions. They simply show where people are paying attention, and millions were paying attention. Then came the plays that turned a great night into a memorable one. The deep shots, the impossible range, the passes that seemed to appear out of nowhere. Every highlight felt like another reminder of why Clark became such a phenomenon in the first place. There are players who make difficult shots. Then there are players who make difficult shots feel expected. Clark was operating in that territory. One moment, she'd pull defenders 25 feet from the basket. The next, she'd fire a pass through a tiny window nobody else even noticed. Defenses kept adjusting. It didn't matter. She kept finding answers. And that's when the frustration started showing up somewhere else. Not from opponents, from fans. Because as impressive as Clark's performance was, another conversation began gaining momentum. The coaching decisions. Questions started flying across social media. Why was she off the floor? Why weren't more possessions running through her? Why did certain stretches feel disconnected from what was clearly working? Whether those criticisms were fair or not, the reaction was impossible to miss. Supporters weren't just analyzing the game anymore. They were analyzing every decision surrounding it. And that level of scrutiny only happens when expectations become enormous. But the coaching controversy revealed something even bigger. Clark's influence had reached a point where every Indiana Fever decision was being viewed through a completely different lens. That's not normal pressure. That's superstar pressure. Because at this stage, Clark isn't being evaluated like an ordinary player. She's being evaluated as a franchise-changing figure. And that changes everything. Every lineup gets questioned, every substitution gets debated,